Okay, good morning everybody, and Hazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Thursday morning as we are studying together Parashat Vayhi. Parashat Vayhi, of course, is the last parasha of the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis. And in it, Yaakov Avinu gives blessings to all of his children. He gathers them around and he starts blessing every single one. My friends, it's amazing to see the blessings that he gives and to analyze and to study every single blessing. You could spend hours on each line, and we're not going to do that. I would just like today to talk about one of the ideas in one of the blessings. You know, if you turn to the blessing of Yehuda, Yaakov Avinu ultimately gives Yehuda one of the most beautiful blessings. Not only does he bless him, but he blesses that future kings will come from him. The pasuk says in chapter 49, Lo yasur shevet mi Yehuda umhokek meben raglav. He says the shevet, the staff, which is talking about malchut, kingship, will not leave Yehuda. Kings come from Yehuda. And that is a promise, that is something that actually going back to the story of Hanukkah, it's something that the Hashmonaim violated. The Maccabees, when they came in and they defeated the Greeks, although they were the heroes of the Hanukkah story, the rabbis criticized the Hashmonaim for taking for themselves the kingship, because after all, they don't come from Yehuda. They come from Levi. They're Leviim, they're Kohanim. And therefore, they violated this pasuk. Lo yasur shevet mihuda. The kingship is only allowed to come from Yehuda, like the Rashi says, Mid David ve'elach. From David and on, all kings come from Yehuda. And today I would like to just understand why specifically Yehuda deserves to be the father of kings. You know, if I were to ask you, of all of the brothers, of all of the Shvatim, which one would you say is the most appropriate to be a king? Which one would you say stands out above all other brothers? Which brother is the most impressive? Which one goes through challenges and difficulties? Which one emerges and shows true leadership? You would think Yosef. You know, all the brothers, which one do we love? Which one do we admire? Which one do we learn from? Who's been the hero? Who has been the hero? Who has been the star for the last 3 weeks? The main character. If you were in a play, who would you want to be? Starring Yosef. It's all about Yosef. Yosef has been the guy for the last 3 weeks. He is number one. Yosef is very, very impressive. And Yosef, of course, gets his share of beautiful brachot. Okay? You know, Yaakov Avinu blesses Yosef with beautiful things. Ben porat Yosef, ben porat alei ayin. But ultimately, when it comes to giving malchut, the crown jewel, he doesn't give it to Yosef. For some reason, Yaakov skips over Yosef and he gives it instead to Yehuda. This is an interesting question that we have to understand. Why doesn't Yosef deserve to be the king? We know that Yosef, in a way, is a king. Yosef was a king in Egypt. But he doesn't become the future father of kings. Instead, Malchut is given to Yehuda. Why? To Judah. Well, the truth is, if you compare these two, Yosef and Yehuda, let's compare them for a minute. Yosef grew up very difficult life. Yeah, at 6 years old or however old, his mother passed away. Some say 6, maybe 9. His mother passes away. At 17, he was ripped from his father. He was ripped from his coat that his father gave him. He was sold as a slave. He spent 22 years alone in Mizrahi. He was accused for doing something that he didn't do with his master's wife, with Eshet Potiphar. Yosef had a very, very difficult life. Yosef's life was a roller coaster. It was not a picnic. He emerges, Yosef, And again, think about it. He's alone in Egypt and he's tempted by this lady and he passes. He passes the test. He doesn't succumb to temptation. He's able to stay ethical, moral. Yeah? His brothers, when they sell him, Yosef, a normal person would be filled with hate, with anger, with vengeance. Yosef has none of those feelings. Yosef is forgiving. Yosef is all loving. Yosef tells his brothers at the end of the story, we saw the happy ending. He says to his brothers, it's not you. Don't worry about it. Hashem had only the best of intentions. Look what came out of it. I'm a king now. Don't worry about it, guys. So Yosef is somebody very, very impressive. And he's got greatness all the way. All the way, Yosef is just killing it. Until when it comes to give the brachot, the kingship. Historically, it's not Yosef that that kings come from. Historically, it's not Yosef who becomes the top. Out of all the tribes, it's actually Yehuda, historically, that becomes the top tribe. Actually, we're called Yehudim. We're not called Josephites, we're called Yehudim. We all today associate, we all come, even if we don't come, but today we title ourselves Yehudim, after Yehuda. And interesting, Yehuda is actually somebody who is not so impressive. You compare Yosef, what he does, to Yehuda. Yehuda actually fails morally. When he is tempted in the crossroads and he sees it was actually his daughter-in-law, but he doesn't know it's his daughter-in-law. He sees Tamar. And what does he do? He gives in to his temptation. And he goes into the room and he does what he does with her. Yehuda is actually the one who said, let's sell Yosef. So where Yosef succeeds, Yehuda fails. Yehuda fails morally. Yehuda fails as far as brotherly love is concerned. What gain? That's how he talks. What gain do we have if we kill Yosef? Yehuda says, let's just sell him. Let's make a few dollars. That's what Yehuda has to say. This is Yehuda. And all of a sudden, this Yehuda, he's the one that's awarded the Malchut. Now, of course, we know that Yehuda does do teshuvah. Yehuda does change. We know that when Binyamin was caught with the goblet which was planted in his bag, and Yosef says to the brothers, okay, you go home, Binyamin will be a slave by me forever. Which brother stands up? Which brother is the one that comes up and says, and puts his life on the line? It's Yehuda. So we find that Yehuda has this complete change in character. Once he was ready to sell a brother, and now he's ready to be sold in order to protect his brother from being sold. Yeah? And this is very interesting to find this just immense amount of change and a reversal in a role play. Where does this Yehuda, this new Yehuda, where does he come from? A Yehuda who once sold his brother to a Yehuda who is now ready to be sold. How does he become that? Where does this Yehuda come from? For this, my friends, we have to go back to a story 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago we read about the story of Tamar. Let's just quickly summarize the story. Tamar is married to Yehuda's son. Married to his son, okay? Ayin Resh, And unfortunately, passes away. So what's the halakha when somebody passes away without children? There's a halakha called yibum, levirate marriage, where the sibling has to marry the wife to continue the legacy of his deceased brother. Well, Onan also dies after marrying Tamar. And now there's only one brother left, but he's very young. So Yehuda sends his daughter-in-law Tamar away in waiting. She is aguna. What's an aguna? It's a lady who's not allowed to get married because she's waiting to marry someone else. Okay? So she goes and she's now waiting for the third brother. Eventually she finds out, she realizes that Yehuda actually has no intention of giving the brother to her as a marriage. She finds out that she's going to stay in aguna forever. You know, if this girl killed already two of her husbands, you start getting a little nervous. Maybe she's going to kill my third son also. So Yehuda's like, I'm not giving her to my son, and that's that. Now Tamar doesn't want to stay barren forever, so she goes and she dresses as a prostitute, and she goes into the middle of the crossroads, and when Yehuda passes by, she tempts him. Yehuda, not knowing it's her, he gives in, he goes in, and he does what he does with her, and she takes from him collateral. She asks for payment, he doesn't have, he didn't bring his credit card, so she takes from him collateral. What does she take? She takes his staff, she takes his robe, she takes his ring. Okay. Well, when he gets home, he gets money, he sends his friend, which by the way is an amazing, amazing idea. The fact that he sends his friend to go and to pay a prostitute for him. Imagine you did something inappropriate in Vegas. Would you send your friend to go collect your garbage? To go pay, right? What happens in Vegas, right? We all know. So you're not going to send your friend. But Yehuda, he sends his friend, which by the way goes to show you, what is a friend? The first time, by the way, a friend is mentioned in the Torah is right here. Right? It's the first place that the word friend is mentioned. Chaver. And it's when Yehuda sends his friend to go, again, pay a prostitute on his behalf. A friend, you have to realize, we all today unfortunately have a misconception of what a real friend is. We all today, we think a friend is someone we hang out with, an acquaintance, etc. A friend is somebody that you could tell your deepest secrets and they won't judge you. Do you have anyone like that, by the way? Ask yourself, how many of those friends do you have? That you could tell them something very ugly about yourself and they won't share it. And not only they won't share it, they won't judge you for it. So this is Yehuda's friend. Yehuda sends his friend to go pay the prostitute. Okay. So he goes to pay her, but there's no prostitute to be found. And he asks, he inquires, and everyone's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have prostitutes over here. So he comes home. He says, Yehuda, sorry to tell you, but you got double sketched. Okay. There's no prostitute and she stole your things. All right. He takes the loss. Maybe it's a write-off, whatever it is. Fine. Now, fast forward 3 months. Tamar, the daughter-in-law, starts showing that she's pregnant. They come, they say, Yehuda, your daughter-in-law Tamar, she's supposed to wait for your third son to marry him. Well, she must have been with somebody else. She's pregnant. She is unfaithful. She's tied down. If she sleeps with somebody else in the interim, that's like cheating. Yehuda says what? Hotzi'uha v'tisaref. Take her and be burned. Kill her. She's chayav mita. The pasuk says Tamar, as she's being taken out to be burned, she sends a letter, a message to Yehuda. And in the message, what does she send? She sends the 3 items of collateral. She sends the staff, the robe, and the ring. And she says to Yehuda, whoever these belong to, he's the one who got me pregnant. Now Yehuda gets this. And Yehuda realizes that he's the father. Yehuda realizes that it was him. Yehuda realizes that she didn't do anything wrong. Actually, what she did by being with him was part of the mitzvah. Because the same way Yibum today is done through a brother, before the Torah was given, it was also able to be done with anyone in the family, including the father-in-law. So when she was with the father-in-law, she did nothing wrong. She was actually doing a mitzvah v'ibum. So Yehuda now, all of a sudden, has this huge dilemma. What do you do? What do you do if you are Yehuda? On the one hand, if you don't do anything, Tamar goes and she gets killed innocently for doing nothing wrong, along with the child or two that are inside. Well, if you do say something, then you are going to be the talk of the town. You're going to become a scandal. Everyone's going to talk about you, right? Could you imagine? The text going to go around, right, that week about, oh, you heard Yehuda? So maybe what Yehuda could do is say, I looked it up, and the halacha is that there's a leniency, and we can let it slide. Don't kill her. Right? You know what Yehuda does? Yehuda says 2 words. Tzadeka, she's right, mimeni. And this baby is from me. You see, this, my friends, is a turning point in Yehuda's life. Here is born something in Yehuda which is what makes him one day the future king of Am Yisrael. The ability to realize that I am sometimes, that I'm wrong. To admit my mistakes, to recognize my sins, to feel regret, remorse, to change, what we call in one word, teshuvah. Yehuda, you could say, is the first Baal teshuvah. This is an amazing moment. Sometimes in life, like Yehuda, we realize we're wrong. Think about to a time that you realize that you were wrong. Okay? I'm sure you don't have to go so far back. Okay? Think of a time in your life that you made a mistake. You had a certain idea, you thought something, you accused someone, and you realize afterwards that the whole thing was a mistake. You falsely accused this person. You come home, you're annoyed why your spouse did X, Y, and Z, or why they didn't do something, and then you build this whole fight to realize midway that you misread the whole story. What do you do? How does one respond? How does one react? Well, unfortunately, a lot of people in life, they react by just simply ignoring the fact that they're wrong. Brushing it under the rug, or changing the topic, escaping, avoiding. Yeah. But to be able to say, I made a mistake. This is something that Yehuda does first. These words, tzadeka memeni, is what give birth to the first Baal Tshuva in history. And not only that, but his name Yehuda, what does Yehuda mean? Yehuda we often think means to think, which it does. But Yehuda also means lehodot. What does vidui mean? Yehuda means, right, when you bang our chest, vidui, Yehuda, to admit, to confess. By the way, the word thank you, you should know the word thank you, to thank somebody, in order to thank someone, you have to admit that you needed them. The word thank and admit is not the same Hebrew word by coincidence. Because one really depends on the other. In order to thank, to say thank you, you have to acknowledge first that you received something. That's why in Hebrew it's called hakarat hatov. Lehakir tova means to recognize that I got something good from you. A lot of times people do good things for us, but we don't want to recognize it. It's hard to admit that I needed you. So the root of thanks is actually admitting, to admit that I needed. My friends, Yehuda means, in one word, Yehuda means to admit. Yehuda is he who acknowledges his sin. To say, I made a mistake. And really, this is what leads to Yehuda's greatness in life. The reason a king The reason kings come from Yehuda is because Yehuda knows that I make sometimes mistakes, and that's okay, but I own up to it. Yosef is somebody who's perfect. He never makes a mistake. Yosef from day one, he's just this amazing guy who's always going right, perfect. But you know what? That's not leadership. A leader cannot, is not going to always make the right choice. A leader is not going to be perfect. That's what leadership is. Leadership means you're leading in unknown areas. You have to make decisions that you don't always know. There's no precedent for them. That's what a leader does, right? There's not always a playbook. There's not always a rule book of what you should do. And a king has to make choices, has to make decisions. Sometimes he's going to make the wrong one. In order to be a king, you have to be able to own up to your mistake. Compare, my friends, the first two kings of Israel. Compare the first king, Shaul, who came from Binyamin, Yosef's brother, versus David. What happens when Shaul sins? Shaul makes a mistake. He doesn't kill all of Amalek. And what does he do? What does he say? So Shaul says, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's the people. They put pressure. This is what they wanted. This is where the polls were indicating. This is what they did. This is what they decided. This is what they wanted. Don't blame me. Don't look at me. It's pressure. This is what Shaul says. What does David say when he's accused for his sin? When they point out to him what he does wrong with Bathsheba? What does David say? David, now again, he could have excused also. But David is able to say, like his great-grandpa, like Yehuda, Chatati. I made a mistake. I'm not perfect. Yes, I'm sorry. You know what? You're right. I am wrong. When was the last time you said those words? When was the last time you said, I'm wrong? Think about it. Very, very hard maybe to think about it. But we don't often say that. We don't often say those words. It's hard to feel and to admit that we made a mistake. Right? We grew up believing that to make a mistake is a bad thing. We were taught that if you make a mistake, that means you're a mistake. We were taught that if you make a mistake, there's something wrong with you. Right? The whole schooling system and testing system. And when you get back a test and there's a big red X on your paper. And to make a mistake is something that makes me subhuman. That's not true. To realize that, you know what? I made a mistake. I'm not perfect. That doesn't make something wrong about me. That doesn't make my decision making. That doesn't make my thought process or my who I am. It doesn't invalidate who I am just because I made a mistake once. But we're scared, right? We're scared to admit we're wrong. Because if I'm wrong, then maybe I'm wrong on other things. Right? Then I need to be a perfectionist. I need to always have the answers to everything. Remember, my friends, that we are not God. And we are not angels. And we are not perfect. There's something very powerful about saying I am wrong. About saying I made a mistake. About saying I'm sorry. I think it's very powerful. Maybe today, try to look for an opportunity today. Try to look for an opportunity in a conversation where somebody points out to you something that you're doing wrong. Maybe it's in your office where your boss or a colleague or an employee or someone says what you're doing, do it different. Maybe it could be in the house. Maybe it could be in the synagogue. Maybe it could be where you spend your leisure time. Today, try to wait for someone to point out something where you did something wrong. And instead, I know what your instinct is going to be, to immediately say, what are you talking about? No, No, that's how you do it. I know what I'm doing. Instead, maybe wait and think about it. Think about it. Maybe we could be today like David. Maybe today like David we could say, Chatati. Wow, you know what? Yes, I am wrong. You're in an argument with somebody, maybe from last night. You know what? I don't have to be stubborn and hold to my side. I realize that they're right. I made a mistake. I falsely accused them. I'm not doing my responsibilities in this relationship. I'm not spending enough time. I'm not doing enough. You know what? I'm wrong. Tzadeka mimeni. She is more righteous than I. This is what Yehuda realizes. This is what Yehuda understands. Yehuda understands that sometimes in life, being wrong doesn't make you less. It actually, admitting you're wrong is what opens the road for kingship. It's what makes Yehuda a leader. Because he is modeh. To admit, we are called Yehudim. That's what we do, that's who we are. We are people who acknowledge where we make a mistake. There's something very powerful in that. So we come back to Yosef and Yehuda, and yes, Yosef is amazing. But that's the problem. Yosef is too perfect. And Yosef never had to say Chatati, he never had to admit. Yosef never shows that he made a mistake and that he's able to acknowledge a mistake. To be a leader, you can't afford someone like that. Because then, when a mistake is made, then maybe they make excuses. Maybe when a mistake is made, and unfortunately today, it's very hard to find people that own their mistakes, especially in positions of leadership, in positions of power. Everybody is blaming the person under them. Yeah, in every area. And we don't know where's the blame. The blame, everyone's just pointing the finger at somebody else. Nobody stands up and says, I made a mistake. To be able to say, Tzadeka mimeni. In life, there's something very powerful about admitting when we make a mistake. So one beautiful story, and then we'll end with this, about the Stipler. Stipler, one of the greatest rabbis of the previous century, Rav Yaakov Kanievsky. Rav Yaakov Kanievsky, the father of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, who many of you maybe have gotten brachot from, his father was the Stipler. The Stipler, Rav Yaakov Kanievsky, lived in Bnei Brak, and he would get many invitations to come join people in their smachot, bar mitzvahs and brit milahs and weddings. At a certain age, though, he was getting too old. He wasn't able to join anymore people's smachot. So out of respect, everyone kept giving him invitations from the community. But of course, they didn't expect that the rabbi would show up. Of course, one day, a boy comes, he gives the rabbi an invitation to his bar mitzvah. The rabbi gives him a bracha, and the boy leaves. Fast forward a few weeks, the bar mitzvah, and the dancing, the kids' bar mitzvah, everyone's dancing, having a good time. And lo and behold, who walks into the bar mitzvah hall? The Stipler. The Stipler walks in and everyone sees the rabbi. They can't believe it. The band starts playing the music. Yamim al yemei melech tozif. Right? They start playing the music for the rabbi. They can't believe it. The Stipler's here. He runs. They greet him in. They walk him into the middle of the circle, and he starts dancing with the bar mitzvah boy. The kid looks up in amazement. He says, "Wow, Rabbi, I can't believe you made it. I wasn't expecting you to come. Thank you so much." He starts dancing for a whole song with the rabbi. Finally, the song's over. The rabbi bends over and he whispers in the boy's ear a message. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. It wasn't just Mazal Tov. Everybody's wondering what in the world is going on. Finally, the boy looks up, he smiles, he nods to the rabbi. Rabbi nods back and he leaves. Now you can imagine, nobody anymore cared about the bar mitzvah boy. Nobody cared about dancing. The only thing they wanted to know is, what in the world did the rabbi tell you First of all, why was the rabbi coming to his bar mitzvah? Rabbi, stop going to parties. And what is he telling you? What was he whispering? The boy explained as follows. He said, 6 years ago, when he was 7 years old, he was praying with the rabbi. He was praying with the stipler in his shul. And it was maybe mincha on a regular weekday. After the Amidah, after he took his 3 steps back and he finished his prayers, the Chazan repeats the Amidah. So the Chazan's in the Hazara, what we call the repetition, the Hazara, the repeating part. He's repeating the Amidah. And this boy has a big book open in front of him on the stender, and he's learning from the book. Now the halacha is, you're not allowed to learn during Hazara. You're not allowed to learn during the repetition of the Amidah. You have to listen to the Chazan and that's it. So, the stipler sees the boy reading from a big book. So he goes over to the kid and he starts rebuking him. You're not allowed to learn, you have to close it, what are you doing? The kid turns red in the face. Not because the rabbi was accusing him, but because he was actually innocent. He wasn't learning. It was actually a large size sidur. He politely shows the rabbi. He says, Rabbi, mechila, I'm not learning. It's a sidur, I'm following the Chazan. The stipler was so embarrassed. Immediately he apologized to the kid. He says, oh, I'm so sorry, I thought it was a Gemara. He's like, no problem, of course, Rabbi, nothing to it. And that was it. Right? No. You see, the stipler felt that because this boy was 7, he was a minor, and his apology was halachically unacceptable. And therefore, the stipler kept a mental note for 6 years, waiting till the boy turned 13. And on the night of his bar mitzvah, he came personally and he whispered in the boy's ear again an apology, a mechila. Do you forgive me for what I did to you 6 years ago, for embarrassing you incorrectly? My friends, this is greatness. This is to say, I made a mistake. I accused you. I was wrong. I learned for the future. No one's perfect. But we have to realize that the power of teshuvah started with Yehuda. To change, to be capable of growth and change, is much greater than to be naturally good. Right? As great as one is because of their natural character. Yosef is great, but Yosef is born great. Yehuda is the one who's capable of growth, of change. He shows us that way. We come from Yehuda, we are called Yehudim. And eventually it's kings, it's Mashiach that comes from Yehuda. Leadership, to be a leader in a home. How about to your children? Did you ever apologize to your children? Maybe you said something to your children that was wrong. Maybe you've accused them. That's very powerful. Do you know what kind of lesson you're teaching your child when you apologize to them? And you say, you know what, my son, my daughter, I accused you and I was wrong. I yelled at you and it was the other sibling that started the fight. I shouldn't have accused you and I'm sorry. Wow. To be a leader, to teach our children leadership, to teach them what it means to apologize, to teach them what it means it's okay to be vulnerable, to be wrong, to admit. This is to be a leader, to be a king. This is what's needed. This is what's required. Remember, our rabbis tell us that as great as a tzaddik gamur is, as great as someone who is righteous, but higher than that is a baal teshuvah. B'makom sheba'alei teshuvah omdim, on the level of a baal teshuvah, afilu tzaddikim gemurim enam yicholim la'amod. Even fully righteous people cannot stand. That is the lesson that we learn from the blessing of Yehuda. Hashem should bless us to be able to know that it's okay to make mistakes. And it's more beautiful to make mistakes and admit than somebody who is just perfect from the beginning. Have a wonderful day, everybody. We'll stop over here. God willing, we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.